Hello, and welcome to God in Film, the podcast where a Christian and an atheist dive into the best that cinema has to offer and see if we can find any parallels with the gospel or any other Bible stories. I am literary critic and emotionally constipated naval captain, Giles Goff.
And I'm librarian and failed nun, Julia Hall.
And to kick us off for season 8 of this lockdown project that got out of hand, we're going to be looking at The Sound of Music, the 1965 American musical starring Julie Andrews and Christopher Plummer, based on the stage musical by Rodgers and Hammerstein, based on their book, based on their memoirs of Maria von Trapp. We'll be looking at what it means to be a real nun, how to channel the love you find inside yourself, and what it means to live the life you want to live. Julia, what did you think of this film?
I'm going to admit something. I feel this happens a lot on this podcast, but I have not seen Sound of Music until I had to watch it for the podcast. I've seen clips.
Yeah.
Like, I think everyone's seen the clips of all the iconic songs, and I think you feel like you just know the film because you've seen, the bit where the kids say goodnight and they're going to bed, and it's all fine. And then I watched the film, and it's weird. It's weirdly, there's like a weird tension that kind of like sits underneath it. You've got these lovely, like, Maria being all very whimsical, and the kids who all clearly need someone with that whimsy, and then there's like a little Heil Hitler jump scare, like halfway through, and then we forget about that for like a little while, and then, oh, Maria's married and it's fine, and then like the last half hour, 20 minutes of the film are like the tensest, most white knuckle half an hour of your life. And then they're happy me ups again. It's a bit of an emotional whiplash sometimes. And the songs.
Yeah, it is like two genres got into the same film and had a fight with each other because on the one hand, as you say, whimsical film, and then we have Hills Are Alive with the Sound of Music, and the rise of fascism is terrible.
Yes.
It seemed frighteningly prescient in some point. That point where his friend Max says, well, it's going to happen anyway, dear boy, just make sure it doesn't happen to you. Like, there's white privilege in it right there.
Watching this film, Christopher Plummer could have done such a good James Bond. Like, the scene where they catch the Von Trapps coming out of the drive with the car, and there's that very, I know what you're doing, and I know what you're doing, but we're both having a very nice civil conversation where we both are fully aware of the gravity of what's going on. And there's that internal viciousness and like, I don't know, there's just something in Christopher Plummer that's very scary and very like dangerous. I honestly feel that he would have made an insanely good James Bond, and I'm thinking that while I'm watching The Sound of Music, like, you know what I mean.
I'm really glad that Christopher Plummer was born when he was, because young Christopher Plummer is definitely a threat to my marriage. My wife is 6 years younger than me, and yet still, clearly, when the two of us watch this film, we're both having a very different experience because she clearly has interesting feelings about Christopher Plummer, and Julie Andrews, who, with the most heartfelt love and respect, has no sex appeal whatsoever.
I feel like the reputation that she has now of like this wonderful like grandmother just seems to follow her all the way back.
Almost like retroactively, doesn't it?
Yes, yeah.
I do like it because with Sound of Music and Mary Poppins, both of them feature like Julie Andrews effectively telling off rich upper class men about the way they handle their children. And I found myself thinking, is she getting paid for all this governessing? I have to look after 2 kids about half a day every day, and then I have like backup and support, and it is the most physically, mentally exhausting thing I've ever done. I go to work for a rest, and yet she's there, and she is not only is she looking after, I've lost count of how many children there are.
Seven.
Seven children.
From 5 to 16.
From 5-16, she has to look after that.
So you're dealing with like,
and not only that, is she is sewing in her off hours. She's turning curtains into play clothes. Like,
7 entire outfits in one
I'm just
night.
saying, that girl needs more than a living wage. Do you know what I mean? Give her all of the money.
She kinda did get that though, because she did marry the boss,
Yes.
who is handsome and has lots of money, so but then I suppose now she's doing it for free.
Yeah, now there's that really awkward bit where he's like, "You're not going to have a governess anymore. You're going to have a new mother." It's like that bit in Borat where he's like, "My wife, she died. It's okay. I got a new wife."
I had no
You
idea.
know, it's that, but in a nice, sexy
Yeah.
Christopher Plummer kind of
And
way.
then you also have, like, the weird love triangle also going on between, like, with Baroness Schrader and
And
him and
and
Maria.
she is like a Hitchcock blonde, isn't she? Do you know what I mean? That kind
Oh,
of ice
yeah.
blonde. Like, I'm not being funny. There is an alternate film in there where it's like a sort of like girly rom-com where this girl, the Baroness, is trying to like just trying to bag her man, and she's got the sassy gay best friend, and yet he cannot seem to get
Max is
his act
so sassy for
together. Yeah.
1965. There's something really weirdly modern about, especially the way that Captain Von Trapp speaks and, like, Max speaks. There's something very weirdly, like, modern about
Yeah.
that. It doesn't feel like it's 1965 or indeed, like,
Yeah.
1935-ish, bit later possibly, but, like, it feels weirdly very modern at the same time. It's a weird film, but I say that affectionately, like,
Yeah.
with love.
I found it a little bit unsettling the way he comes in. He's like, "You, the children do this, and they march at dawn, and they do all that sort of stuff." And he's very militaristic and very on form. And you think, okay, well, that's just the way that guy is. And then you see him with the Baroness. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, you
He's,
do know how
like,
to be
different
charming.
man.
It is within your skill set.
Yeah,
So you just
yeah,
don't do it for the help is what's going on here, you know? So
yeah.
anyway, we could go on like this for ages. I want you to really blow my socks off here, Julia. I want you to
Okay, there's a
really
lot of pressure.
come hard with the Julia's facts now.
Okay, I have a
Mhm.
few. You know how I like to do my sort of what if
I'm aware.
scenarios. So we potentially could have had the lovely Doris Day as Maria, which she did exclude herself. She was like, they asked her and she was like, I'm way too American for anyone to believe I'd be an Austrian nun, which is fair enough, especially for me because she is Calamity Jane, and that's all she is to
Right,
me
okay.
is like a rootin' tootin' cowboy. I'm one of the boys kind of
Mhm.
gal. But Sean Connery was apparently also considered for Captain Von Trapp, which is interesting
What you just
considering
said,
the
yeah, the
James
James Bond
Bond
connection.
parallel,
Yeah.
and again, as someone who can be quite charming and also quite stern. So
Mm.
that could have been an interesting
If you
mix.
want charming and stern and treating blonde women really questionably with Sean Connery, then Marnie is the film for you, you know?
If you want that, but a little bit less, Indiana Jones and Last
Yeah.
Crusade. But to be fair, he can treat that blonde as questionably as he likes because she is a Nazi, so that's completely justified.
You're allowed to ghost Nazis. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Nazis
Um,
can be left on red. That's fine.
Don't even leave
Well,
them on
it's
red,
do you know
just
what?
swipe that
It's so
notification.
funny because this film still effectively has a girl trying to date a Nazi in it. The, Rolf, the telegram boy, it's terrifyingly prescient because
Mm,
you see the aspect where he's becoming more radicalized into the far
yeah,
right, but also you see how that comes with, like, a rich vein of misogyny through there. Do you remember the whole,
yeah.
"I am you are
Yes,
16 going on
16
17,"
going on
and there's this
17.
whole thing about how
Like, you need a
you
man to teach you
yeah,
what to
there's this
think.
weird thing where you both sexualize, girls, but also infantilize girls at the same time. It's like, dude,
Pick a
pick
lane.
one. Pick one, my brother, you know? And it's so funny how, like, the fashions change, but the racism doesn't, do you know what I mean? And the way
Yeah,
those 2
yeah,
things just go hand in hand. And then she comes back with the most sarcastic, "Oh, yes, clearly I need somebody older and wiser." And I kind of feel like I want her to say, "Do you know anybody? Because you're still
yeah.
basically a child."
You're like, you're almost there,
Yeah,
but
you're
just
just
need
you're
that
so close.
extra bit. And again, as I like my what if scenarios. So, a working title for the film was actually The Singing Heart.
I think it's fine, but
It's fine, it does what it said, but then also it doesn't have that ring at the Sound of Music.
anytime you put heart in the title, it's gonna feel a bit generic.
Yeah, but the apparently, I forget who was the lyricist and who was the
Mhm.
melody, the composer.
So, Rodgers is the composer, Hammerstein
Yes,
is the, lyrics, I believe,
lyricist.
yeah.
Yeah. He agonized over, every single word. But the beginning lines of The Sound of Music was "The hillside is sweet, the summer music,"
Hmm.
which eventually evolved into the phrase that we know now, which is obviously "The hills are alive." But speaking of hills, actually, that does lead us into a nice segue. So, I think as anyone who's done anything like any basic Wikipedia research, the film is not particularly historically
Mm.
accurate in detailing the actual story of the Von Trapp family. So, for example, they did quite a few performances between 1935 and 1938-ish. It wasn't just kind of the one-off, and then they skip over the Alps. They actually took a train to Italy, and that was the day before the borders closed. The original Maria Von Trapp was actually sort of more or less okay with a lot of the kind of historical inaccuracies, but one thing she absolutely could not abide was the geographical inaccuracy. Because if in real life they'd gone over the mountains that they go over in the film, they would have not reached Switzerland, but would be directly en route to one of Hitler's holiday homes, which I think is like the direct opposite of where they wanted to be. And the real Maria von Trapp was understandably not cool with that. Uh, that was her one kind of real pet peeve really with the film, was that absolute glaring
Yeah,
historical accuracy.
yeah, fair.
Yeah, but it also this one surprised me. So it had one of the longest first runs in cinema ever
Right.
at nearly 4 years or around 4 years. I cannot in this day and age imagine something being in the like 4 months is a long
That is
time.
insane.
4 years in the cinema, it was huge, like absolutely huge.
Mm.
You're lucky if it's in the cinema 4
Yeah.
weeks. I don't know how frequent it would have been in that 4 years, whether it was like once a day
Mhm.
or like once a week.
So in the days before, like streaming or home video releases or anything like that, what Disney would do is they would get their films, the films would go in the vault, and then they would periodically like re-release them. So you
Mm.
would have like you'd have Sound of Music or Mary Poppins or other things, and they'd just kind of pop up every so often. So you could go take the kids to see them, and you could, because otherwise there's literally no other way that you can take your kids to that your kids can see any of these things, you know? But the idea that it was consistent for that 4-year
Yeah.
period, and also it's not a short film, is it?
No, with a few exceptions, modern films now tend to be a good 2
Mm,
hours. The sort of 80s and 90s, they tend to just be like an hour and a half, and like that's kind of your lot, unless it's something like, I don't know, early 2000s, like Lord of the
yeah.
Rings, which is like 2 hours per side, which we
We'll
love.
let yeah. We'll let Lord of the Rings is the exception of the rule. We will let you off. I've said this before, and I'll say it again, that cinema is the only art form constrained by how long you can go before you need a wee.
Mm.
And at least with Sound of Music, they are kind enough to put an intermission in the middle there.
It almost has like a false ending and then another, like, you're like, "Oh, Maria's getting married, this is clearly the end of the film," and then you look at the mouse and there's like another half hour and you're like,
Oh gosh, what's gonna happen?
"What could possibly
Yeah.
happen?" Everything has happened that you would expect of this kind of air quote golden age of cinema musical
Mm.
film. But no, genuinely the scene where they're hiding in the churchyard, or rather the, I don't want to say graveyard, I don't think that's technically the right term, but the behind the graves in the
Mhm.
abbey, I've never felt that tense for a long time, because I knew that they would escape,
Mhm.
because I know,
The gist.
I exist on the internet, I know the ending, but I was genuinely on the edge of my seat. And I'm like, again, at the back of my brain, this is The Sound of Music. This is So Long, Farewell, I'll be just like this. It's the same film. And I'm sat here tempted to skip ahead just to like know that they're gonna be okay
Yeah,
and I can continue to watch the film. Do you
I
know what
love
I mean?
that.
Crazy. You probably know that The Sound of Music won Oscar for Best Picture.
Mhm.
It also won Tony for Best
Mhm.
Play. And it's one of only two shows to ever do that,
Yeah.
the other one being My Fair
Right,
Lady,
okay.
which is also interesting because I think there's a little bit of rivalry between Audrey Hepburn, who is the film version of Eliza Doolittle, and Julie Andrews, who was the show version of Eliza
I didn't
Doolittle.
know that.
I, yes, yeah. I believe I didn't. I kind of half came across it and meant to cross reference it. I think Audrey Hepburn may possibly have been potentially in the running for Maria, the same way that she was in My Fair
Mhm.
Lady. I think more from, like, how she looked rather than how well she could sing. So Audrey Hepburn doesn't do her own singing for My Fair Lady.
Okay.
She was an exceptionally accomplished lady in lots of
Yeah.
other
Well,
things.
okay, Audrey Hepburn
A great
is
deal of other
my
things.
G, and I'll tell you why, okay? Long before she was famous, long before any Hollywood and the rest of it, in her native country, I want to say somewhere Scandinavia, but I don't know, somewhere up my head, during, like, the Nazi occupation, she would be part of these little, I think, like ballet recitals or these little performances, right? And people
Mm,
pay money to see them, and then that money would be funneled to the
yeah.
resistance.
She was, like, full on being, like, a
Audrey
rebel.
Hepburn has literally danced against Nazis, effectively.
Yeah, yeah, she is, like, unproblematic queen. We love Audrey Hepburn, but she wasn't that great at singing.
Yeah,
God had to nerf her somehow, right? So he was like, "You can't sing." So the film role went to her,
yeah.
and Julie Andrews was famously her on stage. So it's quite a nice little link between the two of them. There are only two musicals ever to win both Tony and Oscar for Best Show and Best Picture, respectively. And they both include Julie Andrews and Audrey Hepburn somewhere, which is clearly a recipe for success.
Yeah.
The amphitheatre scene, so when they do their first and only performance in the
Mhm.
film as a family, there's a few little tidbits I found out about this. So Robert Wise was under the assumption that Edelweiss was a genuine Austrian folk
Mm.
song, and was very surprised to find out that it wasn't, and they had to spend an extra 2 hours teaching all the Austrian extras the words because they didn't know it. It was an overnight shoot in a very cold
Mhm.
amphitheater, with only sort of camp beds to, keep to rest on between takes. But apparently, Christopher Plummer was taking the odd sip of schnapps now and then to keep warm, and was apparently quite tiddly by
Love
the
it.
end of filming.
Yeah.
Yeah, if he looks a little bit out of it in some of the takes, he is drunk as a skunk on schnapps.
Okay, so the first time I heard Edelweiss is it's the theme tune for Man in the High Castle.
Oh,
It's
that's
the
interesting.
it's the speculative fiction where
Mm,
not like what if the Nazis won the Second World War?
yes.
So it has this sort of like very haunting kind of melody in it, and it's very kind of creepy. It's interesting. Fun fact: that theme tune also has like the sound of a projector, like running, whirring right through it.
Mm,
And when I was asking Rick to compose a theme tune for me, I said I wanted the sound of a projector coming like in the opening to Man in the High Castle. So it's like a direct
mm.
inspiration on this show.
Awesome. Yeah, that is the end of my facts. That's everything I've gleaned that I thought would be interesting.
Those are amazing, Julia. Thank you so much for those. You outdid yourself as per usual. So, just a quick reminder if you would like us to stay on the air and ad free, you can go to www.patreon.com/God of Film podcast and sign up to our Bishop Waller-Bridge tier to support us financially. There, you can check out our Bruce Springsteen bonus episode.
Spoiler alert, he emigrated from, or at least his ancestors emigrated from a similar, I think the same town that Doris Day's ancestors are from.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, it's like this one specific town, the name of which does escape me. But the Springsteen surname itself is what we call a topographical surname, which means that it's derived from environmental factors. So it literally translates to jump stone.
I'm not even sure if Bruce even knows that because it doesn't come up once in his autobiography. It's just like, my name's Springsteen, it came from Dutch ancestors.
It essentially the way back in the day before streets were kind of properly paved and they tended to be a little bit muddy and
Yeah.
messy, especially on unpaved streets. You'd have these little stones that you could step on between
Yeah.
each side of the streets that you would avoid stepping in any of the muck, or a jump stone, if you will. So that's potentially where the surname comes from, which I do love a little bit of name etymology. I think that's always something fun to look at.
Plus, you can hear additional interviews and special bonus episodes like our God in U2 and God in Gaming episodes. And if you're a bit strapped for cash and you still want to support us without spending money, then leaving us a 5-star review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Facebook, Podbean, or wherever you've been listening to this will make a huge difference in pointing people towards the show. Okay, now, Julia, we have had some interesting guests in our time on this show.
We have.
We kicked off this show with a Lord of the Rings extra. I have had half of Bangor University's alumni be on here at some point. We've got an exorcist on somewhere in the past.
Yes, I remember that was a good one.
We've got our first nun on the show.
Amazing.
I'm collecting like ecumenical bingo. All right, so we've got priests, we've got nuns. If I can get like a disgraced former Archbishop of Canterbury on it, we'll be winning. Okay, so this is an interview with our nun to give us a real insight into what being a nun is like. I'll let her introduce herself.
I'm Sister Jessica. I'm part of the Anglican Benedictine community at Mucknell Abbey, which is just outside Worcester. It's a mixed community of both monks and nuns, which is very unusual. I've been part of the community for just over 8 years now, and I made my life vows in December of last year.
Sister Jessica, thank you so much for being on the podcast. You have the honour of being the first nun that we've ever interviewed for the show.
Excellent.
So let's get into it. What made you want to become a nun?
It was quite a winding road, as these things often are. Before I joined the monastery, I was a primary school teacher. I'd been teaching for about 10 years before I moved here. And while I was teaching, I had a sense that there was something more that God wanted me to do with my life. The church has a fantastic way of assuming that that means you automatically are going to be a priest. There's a very effective kind of funnel. Fortunately, the person who I went to see about that, the director of Ordinance, Oxford Diocese, was very lovely and very sensible, and could see that I was not really suited to being a priest. And it was she who suggested to me that I take a look at the religious life. And so I visited both Mucknell Abbey, where I am now, and another convent in Oxford, just to meet some real monks and nuns, see a little bit of what the life was like. And I came back to Mucknell for a second visit. So my first visit was February of 2016. My second visit was August of 2016. And it was really that second visit that I just felt like, yeah, this is it. This is home. This is where I want to be. And there isn't really a logic to that in the same way, I suppose, there isn't really a logic to who you fall in love with. Why did you marry the person you married? Because you just had to marry them.
I loved that.
And there's something of that in my life here, but there was just something here that I had to come and see, I had to come and experience. And there's a whole series of stages that you go through before you get to actually making your life vows and making that firm commitment. This still feels like the place to be.
Fantastic. So for most of us, we don't get to meet many nuns or monks in our sort of daily life. I think I was educated by two of them, but it's been a long time since I've had a conversation with a nun. So what is your world like? What is your daily routine like?
So my community is what's called a contemplative community, which means that our prayer is our work is our prayer.
Right.
So we don't work outside the monastery. Like, for example, the sisters on call the midwife, they work outside of their buildings. They still pray, but that's not their main work. Whereas for us, our prayer is our main work, and that's what structures our day. So we have 7 services each day, which begin at 6 in the morning, and the last one's at 8:30 in the evening. And it's a lot. It's a lot.
Sorry, I was really trying to hide that.
No, it's a lot. So those services punctuate our day. So I've just come from one, actually. So we have a short one at 2:15, just for sort of 10 minutes. And then I'll be back in chapel again at 5:30 for Vespers, which is kind of evening prayer.
Right.
So that's really our main work. Beyond that, there's all the work of running a large household. So we're 11 of us who live here full time. So there's cooking, there's cleaning, there's laundry. We also have a kitchen garden, which I do quite a lot of work in. We have a 40-acre estate that needs looking after. And we also have a small guest wing for people who come and join us for some retreat time. So that's really our main kind of work.
That sounds lovely. So are there any kind of misconceptions that you feel you kind of bump into quite a lot? I mean, just the listeners won't be able to see this, but you look like a plainclothes division nun. I am not seeing any wimples or anything like that. So what are some of the things that you often find people feeling or thinking about nuns that is a misconception?
I think people think that living in the monastery is like being on retreat 24/7. It is not. We work hard. We do almost all of our own domestic work. And that's a lot, even, and obviously there's 11 of us, but that's not 11 equally capable people. One of our members is journeying further into dementia, and so he's quite limited in what he can do now. So there's care for him as well, and we're all differently abled and differently gifted in different ways. We work hard, and we've been working particularly recently So we're doing some work looking at our community life, how we structure that. So that's been a lot of things to think through and talk through.
Hmm.
Plus just the daily living alongside 10 other people who, I didn't choose them. I might not have chosen all of them. When I was talking to Sister Alison, who's also a member of the monastery here, just before she made her life vow, and she talked about, promising herself to the people who were already here and to everyone else who God sends through the door.
Mhm.
So, there's definitely, I don't know, risk maybe isn't quite the right word, but, you never quite know who's going to come next.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and I've promised to stay here. You notice that I'm not wearing any of the headgear.
Sadly.
Sadly, indeed. Well, yeah, sadly, fortunately.
If I'd known, I would have worn my own to balance it out.
Yeah. So that's because we're a mixed community,
Mhm.
because we keep things as equal as we can between the men and the women. So the men don't wear veils and wimples, so we don't wear veils and wimples. So, so we all wear the same habit. We do have a very silly hood that's like this huge.
I love
you can
it.
zip listeners can't. So we do have that. Very much that thing, people just think that it's a very peaceful, very tranquil life. And in some ways it is.
Hmm.
There's a lot of things I don't have to worry about, which is great. But it's also a very demanding life, which I think brings you very much face to face with yourself, particularly as you relate to the others around you.
So if there was anybody who was thinking about joining a monastery like the community you're in, is there any particular advice you'd give them?
I mean, the best thing you could do is just come and visit. We always invite people who are thinking about it, come and visit, come and get some sense of what it's like, talk to some of us. We're always happy to talk to people who are interested in inquiring. So, and do some reading. There are various written accounts of monastic life, not all of which are beautifully accurate, but, there is stuff out there to at least begin that exploration.
Talking about things with questionable accuracy, having seen the convent in A Sound of Music, I'm fairly sure you can probably pick out the things that aren't quite accurate. I don't imagine you guys burst into song complaining about each other that much. Or maybe you do, I don't know. Are there any aspects of it that you recognise, or is there anything particularly egregious in it?
I mean, there's nothing hugely egregious apart from the whole general, bursting into song the whole time. We don't tend to do that. It's set in a certain time.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, the way that they do some things looks very old-fashioned to us now. But I think actually what really impressed me particularly about the Mother Superior, is how realistic she is with Maria.
Yeah.
She's clear, this life is not for everyone.
Mm.
And if this life isn't for you, that doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. That doesn't mean you're not following God's will for your life. It's about how are you called to follow God? And if that's not here in this convent, fine.
It's a really sort of firm but loving conversation she has with her, and she just sort of strikes the tone really nicely there.
I think she does strike it absolutely beautifully, in saying to her, it's about how are you called to live out the love in your life, and there isn't a right way or a wrong way to do that. There are different ways of doing it. And, and she's not trying to force her to stay. She's not pressuring her. If anything, she's trying to kick her out the door.
Absolutely. Well, listen, Sister Jester, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. And it's really nice to just get insight into a world that we never normally get a look in.
No, you're very welcome. It's been lovely to join you. If any of your listeners are active on social media, there are various nuns of Twitter. There are nuns of Blue Sky. There are nuns of Facebook. So, we're out there.
And we're going to have to check them out. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, Julia, that was Sister Jessica. What do you think?
I have considered at one point what it would like to be a nun. I think especially if I was born in medieval times, I would just go be a nun, because it does sound like a pretty okay life for your job to be studying the Bible and praying and stuff. But if there's washing up involved, man, that could be a deal breaker for me. Doing the dishes is endless.
Yeah.
You'll finish dishes and somehow there's more dishes.
I know, right? And you have to think of what are we going to have for dinner every night until you're dead.
Every day.
Now it's time for Finding the Faith in the Film.
Bye-bye.
Today, we're doing something a little bit different. For a little bit of context, my editors at Premier Christianity asked me to review a book, and we managed to go and get the author of said book on the show.
It's pretty big.
So we have an Anglican priest, author, speaker, broadcaster with us to tell us about the faith parallels in the Sound of Music. Her name is Reverend Bryony Wood. Bryony, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Hi, it's really good to be here. Thank you for asking me. I feel very honoured.
It's a big deal for us. This is the pros are here.
It also makes my life easier because somebody else has already done all the research.
Yeah.
So
Put your feet up, get a broom.
yeah, just put the bins out. So, Bryony, I don't know if I love any film quite as much as you love The Sound of Music. This might sound like a daft question, but what made you want to write a book on this particular film?
Oh, it's a really good question. It was the first film I ever went to watch when I was like a child. And I remember sitting in this huge cinema. It was my first experience of being at the movies. I was overwhelmed by it. I just fell in love with it. And then, anybody that came round to our house, they would have to stand or sit and wait while I performed Do Re Mi or Edelweiss or whatever. And I'd stand on the coffee table and warble away. And I just absolutely loved it. But everybody always used to either laugh at me singing or tell me to shut up. And I was in that era when you saw it once. That would have been in the sort of late 60s. And then I didn't see it again until Christmas Day. I think it was 1978, which was the first time it was shown on British television. I'd had to wait all that time because, like you said earlier, that there were no videos or DVDs or anything like that. And the only LP that I owned for 5 years was The Sound of Music. So I knew the songs, but I didn't watch the film because you just couldn't.
Yeah.
And then as I grew up and I wanted to watch it, everybody in the family would say, we're not watching that thing again. So I never really watched it that often, but I loved it.
Mhm.
Everybody used to joke, that would be my favorite film. But then it's an iconic film. So it really does encapsulate something, and it is timeless. But I thought I could do a Bible study about this. I could do a 6-week Bible study, which will really engage people about the film. So I thought, well, I'll sit down and I'll watch the film and I'll have a pen and paper and I'll have a remote control and I'll just kind of see what springs out when I'm watching it. And then somehow, by the end of the first song, I'd kind of got 4 separate reflections. And I thought, this is weird. By the time I got halfway through the film, I realized that I'd got more than a 6-week Bible study. I'd got the makings of a book. So I started to do it and started to write it and muse upon all of the things. I've got a quirky brain.
No.
I have got a quirky brain. So I've always written like thought for the days and things like that. So that sense of being able to look at something and think about something else is kind of how my brain works. So that is something that I've always done. But what was amazing, I'd sit down and I go, okay, God, what are we going to think about this time? But not only watching the film, but I was reminded of something in my life that kind of reflected that. But also the right Bible verse kind of popped up and it just seemed to make sense. So each one almost came as a package.
Mhm.
And I would write it down and then I'd go away and sort of work on it. And my husband, who's much better at English language than I am, would kind of read it and make sure that it made sense and correct my spelling mistakes and all the other things. And we ended up with a script of a book that kind of just fell out the sky almost.
I love that your husband reads over and proofreads your stuff because I have a basic rule that nothing I do goes out into the world until the good lady editor here indoors checks over everything and then keeps saying, yeah, this is great. You keep using commas far too much, but that's your own issue.
There's only so much she can do. Some things are ingrained too far.
So, having read your book, it is so Moorish. The chapters are so small. You're sort of shooting through them, but also you really take your time over it. You have an entire chapter right at the start dedicated to the establishing shots of the film. You have an entire chapter dedicated to Maria going, oh, help. You've clearly got like an absolute wealth from this film, which I love. But if I asked you to really sort of nail down what are the core things, the core faith parallels that you find in this film, what would they be?
I think one of the crucial lines in the film is when Maria has run back to the Abbey because she's realized that, there might be something untoward going on between her and the captain. And she's ready to take her vows. And Reverend Mother says to her, you have to discover the life that you were born to live. That's what you have to live. And that sentence jumped out at me like nothing else. So when I go and do events in churches and things like that, that's kind of the core. What is the life that we're born to live? Alongside another one, which I think is equally quite poignant, and it's the film clip from Do Re Mi. And we have great fun when we do events because we do all the actions for it, and it's kind of loony, but great fun. And there's a line in that says, "Me, a name I call myself." And of course, me, M-I is the musical notation. But if you tweak M-I to M-E, and it's me, who am I? Where do I fit in this huge world, this big story that you see with those opening shots, this massive, beautiful world. And then you see the face of one woman running in. And you begin to realize that we're all players of a bigger story. We're all part of something magnificent and eternal. And so you've got those kind of things. Who are we? Where do I fit in the story? Who am I? What's my purpose? So that kind of, I think, encapsulates the main things that I would say about The Sound of Music.
And I think that's fascinating because I think, particularly in Christian circles, there is a real paucity in terms of just vision of what you can do in the church. It's like, well, you could be a preacher, or you can be in the worship band, or you're on tea and coffee rota, or
Putting out the chairs. I hear that's quite big.
Nobody gets rotated for that. We just do it. Like, how do you impress girls if you can't show them that you can like carry 5 chairs at once? For like 13-year-old Giles, it will be decades before he realizes that girls aren't impressed by that. But by that time, he will come up with some pretty decent arms from stacking all those chairs.
So like, it's not how much can you bench press, it's how many chairs can you carry at once.
Yes, I'm glad
Okay,
you
I got
understand the system.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then it like evolves to like, how many tables can you roll at once?
Oh, I
How
didn't realize
fast
there
do
were
you stack it? Yeah,
layers.
there's layers to this, baby.
I went
you know?
to a different church. I kind of went to, how many donuts can you eat without licking your lips at once? It's clearly in a different
That
church,
sounds
you
like my
know.
kind of church. I would go there.
But the point I was trying to make is that one of the things I struggled with, possibly growing up and also as coming into my young adulthood, was trying to find a way to fit into my church felt really difficult. I've always felt like a little bit of an imposter, always felt like a bit of an outsider. I kind of just had to carve my own niche into this. Like, for fundraising, I found that it was easier for me to sort of get a team around me and put on a play than it was to sort of do anything else. So it does feel like that live the life you're meant to live is something that we need to approach with a lot more kind of imagination and open-mindedness. You know, there are so many different ways you can serve God in so many different contexts.
I think that I'd turn a lot of that on its head, you see, because it's not about us becoming a really good Christian, about fitting into church. That's not why we're on the planet. We're not here to kind of be good pew fodder. We're not here to be good churchgoers. There's a fabulous sentence, I use it a lot, and Jesus didn't come to make us good churchgoers. He came to help us be fully human.
Yeah.
And that's what I see in Maria, this unfolding story of her doing, but in the end, she's being. We're human beings, not human doing. So it's not about what we do, it's about who we are. Who are we becoming? And the glory of the film, we see, you know, this stern captain becoming softer and rediscovering the love of his family, the love of music. We see Maria discovering how to spend the love that lives inside of her. We see the children who are locked into this grief-stricken household where nobody dares to step beyond the boundaries because everything is being held together by the tension of grief. And that all of a sudden they become the children they're designed to be. So it's this whole becoming thing. Rather than the doing of going into a convent and singing Vespers 7 times a day or whatever.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. Somebody did say to me once, it's not about what you do for Christ, it's about who you are for Christ. And again, that feeling, particularly in your early 20s, that feeling, that need to feel useful and feel to sort of feel valued. And for me at the time, it was like making the promotional videos for a church. And I remember a friend of mine said, mate, your videos are great, but when we get to heaven, it's not the videos we're going to be talking about.
This is clearly something that you're passionate about. And then kind of for someone to be like, oh yeah, but in heaven, we're not going to be talking about that. To me, it would feel dismissive.
I do see what you mean. I think what it meant to me was that it wasn't about how well you hone your craft when you're serving God.
Mm.
To me, it was all about like how well can you show people that you love them.
Yeah.
That's essentially what it boils down to in that sort of sense, you know?
I don't take criticism well though, so that I get defensive, so that makes sense for
I
me.
think if I was going to answer what you just said, Julia, I think we've all been given gifts and abilities, and it's incumbent on us to try and use them as best we can. Because why would you be given a gift and not use it? Whether it's a Christmas gift or a gift of your character and your personality, but we're more than that.
Yeah.
This is the whole thing about being, not doing.
Mm.
You have a gift of something, but you outwork that by
Mm.
default, because that's who you are. We don't earn our way
Mm.
into God's good books. And when you've only got to look at a newborn baby. I've had 4 kids, and you look at your child and you would walk over hot coals within 5 minutes of them being born, not because they've done anything, just because they are.
Yeah.
It's that whole sense of being, doing.
Claire also pointed out to me that the idea that our value is based on our usefulness is a capitalist lie.
Mm.
So loving yourself and seeing value in yourself is an act of rebellion in that way. And also, the way I think about it is, again, coming back to God talking about Julia, and he's talking to his mates, and he's like, oh, you should check out this girl. She is ace. Not only is she's so funny, she's so reliable, she's such a good friend, and she's a great to hang out with. She's just great to be around. And then when he's finally done talking about just your personality, then he'll be like, oh, and she's also a kick-ass researcher and librarian and archaeologist and all that sort of stuff. He'll get to all the things you do, but it's who you are that impresses him more.
Yeah. I think it's kind of interesting in that scene that when she's asking for her purpose in the church and she wants to be a nun, it's interesting that actually she's like, well, actually your place is out of the church. That whole scene is very interesting to me because it's just before she sings Climb Every Mountain, isn't it? And you've got Maria in that very obvious triangle of light, and the Mother Superior is in pretty much total darkness for most of that scene. Eventually she kind of moves over to the window and you get a bit of light. The cinematography bit of that scene really felt weird to me.
Okay.
And I'd love to know Bryony's take on this, because I get that obviously Maria being in the light and she's kind of enlightened and she's sort of learning what it is that she wants to do with her life, but having the Mother Superior be in almost total
silhouette.
darkness as that when she's being that guiding force is just a really interesting choice to me.
Yeah.
I wonder whether she's singing it for herself as well as she's singing it for Maria. I think it's that sense of, if something's worth the destination, it's worth the journey. And it's that sense that she's singing about, you have to climb every mountain, you have to ford every stream till you find your dream. You have to do this. So I think it's quite reflective, as well as, her just telling Maria what the next stage is. From the bits that I've read about the filming of that scene, I think there were practical things about they needed her to be in a silhouette rather than full light because of lighting or whatever.
Yeah.
And I can't remember exactly, so I don't want to say the wrong thing. But I think there was a practical cinematic reason for that as well. I'm fascinated that you've picked up on that, because every time I look at this film, I see something different. And I've seen it more times than I cannot ever count now. I've seen snippets of it. I've seen it all the way through many, many times. And every time there is something that you notice. In fact, I did a 5-day retreat about it about a month ago. I'd heard that if you looked closely, you could see the real Maria on Trap in the background. When they're singing I Have Confidence. Paused it and you could see her. So it's like, I hadn't seen that before. It's storytelling at its best.
It's a really nice depiction of nuns.
Yeah.
Going back to our Springsteen episode where nuns get a bad rap because nuns are doing horrendous things to people.
Yeah.
Like in the cultural zeitgeist, nuns are usually sort of figures of horror. The idea that the worst thing they do in this one is call somebody a flibbertigibbet, which is an awesome word.
That really gets me going, that song, because it's like, how easy is it to label other people and then you fulfill those labels? They had labeled her as a failure. She was not going to win Postulant of the Year award. She fulfilled that when you see her running through and taking that drink of water from the tap in the middle and then rolling her eyes as
she looks at me, she's like, oh. You
Yeah.
know, it's
But it just
so-
shows, you see, that she as a person was not a Flibberty Gibbet. She'd
Hmm.
been wrongly labelled. But even
Mm.
in that, you've got this dialogue between she's a will o' the wisp, a clown, a demon, but she's a girl. She's how do you hold a moonbeam in your hand? I mean, there's this real sense of they're trying to work out who she is. And yes, you've got a couple of the sort of more austere ones, but they're the ones at the end when they've taken out the carburetor and the thing out of the cars, you know,
Forgive me for I have
again,
sinned.
I love that. I love it.
It was so perfect to me, especially when you spent the last 10 minutes in a very tense standoff as just a, like, it's just a nice bit of like comic relief and tension relief. Honestly, I think the shadier thing is them singing that song at her wedding.
Yes, I thought
Like,
that. Why? And also, I never really got. Why were there only 3 of the girls that were bridesmaids, not all of them? It's like, I could have been a bit miffed if I was not one of those bridesmaids.
exactly, like, yeah.
But it is that whole sense of this story unfolding and all of those things that make you look at it again. And I loved
Mhm.
how you talked about it, Julia, because when I wrote the book, I presumed it would just be women of kind of my age and older. And I thought that, you know, there'd be a really small, I knew that it was part of our national consciousness. I
Mhm.
remember getting off the train at King's Cross once when I was going through London, and I walked past 2 buskers who were like, you know, 300 yards apart, and they were both playing Sound of Music songs. And it's like, okay, this is weird. All these things, it's so much part of who we are as a, not just in England, everywhere almost, but Germany and Austria. So that sense that you really loved it has been borne out by the people that I now speak with and to through the book. And so many men, I thought it would be just females. It
Mhm.
is so not. And so many older people and lots of younger people because they're watching it again and again. And it's one of the true family films. And I still, my heart rate is doubling when I'm watching them. The Nazis going to get them this time. Are they going to get shot this time?
Do you know,
Even
it's interesting you were saying about it being a family film. I was putting a bit of it on, say, just last minute research, and I was expecting my eldest, Riley, who was recently turned 5, so he really knows what's up in the world. I was expecting him to be like, can we turn it off so I can watch Sarah and Duck or Paw Patrol? He was watching it with absolute rapt attention, so it clearly has some kind of cut through, even to like Generation Alpha.
I think it's an incredibly clever film.
Do you know, there's something interesting is how profoundly brave Maria is in any context. She's sort of portrayed as quite guileless and a little bit naive in a lot of times, but the fact that she can accurately diagnose what is wrong with these children and this household and have the guts to sort of talk to this military man and say, look, this is what's up. You are not loving your kids right. And he's like, no, well, I'm done with it. And she's like, no, I'm still talking. I found that fascinating. Julia, do you know the story in the Bible of Esther?
I don't.
Okay. Okay. All right. So
It's the one book of the Bible, Julie, that never mentions God.
that's fascinating.
I didn't even know that was a thing.
It,
That's really interesting.
God is not mentioned.
It's also arguably one of the most feminist stories in the Old Testament. That and maybe the Book of Ruth, thinking about it. Okay. So there's this king. I have completely forgotten the king's name. I've only
Artaxerxes, isn't it?
Artaxerxes. I like this. Let's have a priest on hand.
Well, that's a bit scary because I haven't got my Bible to hand and I might say the wrong thing, but hey,
So there's this king. He's having like this sort of like weeks long sort of binge, and he's getting really drunk and sort of a bit leery. He tells his queen that she's to come and parade naked in front of all his guests wearing her crown and nothing else, and she says no. That's disgusting. What are you doing? So he then divorces her. He then gets rid of her, and he just gets himself a new wife, right? And he gets there's the land is scoured because you've got to find a new wife for him. And you find this girl called Esther, who is a Jewish girl, and this is during the time of like Babylonian exile, I think. I'm not too sure.
She was not a native to that country.
Yeah,
Mm.
and somewhere along the line, one of the courtiers is basically like, "Oh, I hate the Jews. Let's have a genocide. Let's just kill all of
Oh,
them."
yeah, just one of those. Yeah.
Mm. And there's this whole thing about how he goes to the king. I think the king is maybe a little bit mentally compromised. He's a little bit drunk or something. He's like, yeah, cool. Sounds like a great idea. Definitely do some genocide. And one of Esther's family members or
Mordecai.
Mordecai, thank you. Normally, I come prepared for this because normally I'm the guy doing the prep. Mordecai says to Esther, "Look, you've got to convince the king not to do this thing. Don't think that you'll just be spared because you're his wife and you're beautiful and all the rest of it." And then there's this gorgeous line that gets repeated so often. For surely you were made for such a time as this. I'm paraphrasing, but I think that's the general gist. The king has this bit after these long binges. He's like, okay, everybody leave me alone. I need to chill out. He's probably got his hangover cure. He's probably like wrapped up in a duvet watching
He
Netflix, I'm
sounds like,
assuming.
those people at
Yeah.
university.
Yeah.
That one
He's that
guy. He sounds like that
he's that
guy.
guy. And there are
That's not a good look.
strict instructions not to interrupt him. And because he's a king in ancient world, if you interrupt him, that will be death because human rights are just nothing.
Obviously.
So Esther, who again is probably about a teenager somewhere in this, actually has the guts to go in, interrupt him during his quiet time, and she's like, "Hey, could you not kill the Jews? Would that be okay?" And she knew that there was a good chance that she would get killed herself for interrupting him, but somehow it works. It doesn't. There's the sort of slaughter of the Jews and just doesn't happen, and Esther survives it and everything, and she's thought of as like the gold standard for like bravery, and I saw just a smidge of that in Maria, the way she's not afraid to sort of speak up for people who are quite vulnerable, like
Mm.
children, and she's not afraid to speak truth to power, even when that power has been very explicit that they don't want to hear it.
That bit was really satisfying. Yeah, when she just lets him have it. And especially because she knows it's going to cost her a job
Yeah.
there as well.
She's dripping wet. She's standing there. She's vulnerable in every sense of the powerlessness, but she speaks out. And it's that sense of anger and righteous anger. And I do, there's a bit about that in here because, she's got a righteous anger. She's standing up for, the oppressed, the ones who are really struggling. And he's got an unrighteous anger because he's
Mhm.
being told truth and he doesn't like it.
Mm.
And I think for all of us, it makes you think sometimes, it is right for us to get angry when we see injustice, when we see something wrong. We have to stand up and use our voice. And there are other times, and I'm sure I'm not the only person listening to this or being in the room, where sometimes I get angry because somebody's told me something that's a little bit too close for comfort. And I know they're true, but I'm going to really get a bit narky because I don't really want somebody to point that out. Thank you very much. So it's fascinating, that all of these little scenes have so much in it, so much in it. Like you said about that thing, oh, help. Sometimes when all we can do is say to God, oh, help. And actually, that's all you need to say, just
Yeah.
knowing where you're directing that, and even if you don't perhaps know it consciously, there's something inside that knows that we cannot do this as a human being on our own. And therefore we kind of need to find the greater power, the greater love in order to be able to do what we are capable of doing beyond our strength. And of course, that's where we would say that, as a Christian, I would say, well, I think that power and that love comes from God. But, we all find ways of sort of tapping into something greater than ourselves. Otherwise, we're a very puny little fragile human being that's only alive for a split second in a vastness of this eternity.
What a wonderful way to end the episode. I thought we were going to end on like a nice, happy, uplifting tone. And there's Bryony going, and of course, life is entirely fleeting and still results in the heat death of the universe. Okay, thanks. Bye, guys.
That's everything.
That's probably not where I was finishing it off in that way, but you know exactly what I mean. Yeah. Yeah, it's this story, this amazing story that we're part of.
Yeah. So live the life you want to live.
Live the life you're born to live. It's an amazing line. Yeah. Climb every mountain, bloom and grow forever, wherever you are.
Live the life you want to live, bloom and grow forever, and resist Nazis at every available opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Speak out for the truth.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Bryony, I feel like we obviously spent the last sort of half an hour doing this, but would you like to plug your book?
Well, it would be daft if I said no, wouldn't I? So yeah, The Sounded Musings was published a couple of years ago, and it's still available through all good bookshops. It's available through online things, whether they're the big ones or the smaller ones. And I've got a website, because for me the book is just the beginning. There is a book, and the book is going great. But what I love is the opportunity to then go to groups of people and talk about life, love, and faith. And I do it in places where you're inviting people perhaps on the fringes of church who are wondering, what on earth is all this about? These people that go to church, what on earth are they doing? So there's one way of kind of doing that, using the joy in the story. And then you can go a bit deeper and sort of dig down to some of this, unpacking all of this wonder that's in this film and this book. So different events. And I go anywhere if somebody wants me to go and talk about Jesus, life, love, and faith.
Fantastic. That's brilliant. So I'm just going to finish off with a little thank you to our patrons, James Pittard, Sam Masella, Miss Sarah Cooper, Philip Coleman, Lance Kane, and one Natalie Faye Miniker. Thank you so much for supporting our podcast, guys. If you want to become
Thank
one of
you.
our patrons, you know where to go. Join us next week for our episode on Star Trek Strange New Worlds. I'm so excited for that one. It's going to be...
We're going to be boldly
We
returning.
will boldly come back to that thing that we seem to
we talked about
do
before.
every single season. I can't wait for it. In the meantime, Julia, have you had a good time?
It is so nice to have not one but two faith experts come and talk to me about things that I know nothing about.
I'm going to have,
But I've learned a lot.
I'm going to have to say, I would never consider myself a faith expert. I would
never consider myself a faith expert either, frankly.
One foot in front of the other, making it up as I go along. And when I kind of need to go, oh, help, there's somebody there that picks me up.
Fantastic. Brian, have you had a good time?
It's been amazing. I really didn't know what to expect. And it's been a joy to chat with you both. And thank you for giving me the opportunity. And also, Julia, you've really, you've not just made my day, you've kind of made my week, my month, whatever, because you haven't seen the film, you've engaged with it and you've loved it, and you just make me realize this is why I wrote the book. So, if you want to give me your address at the end of it all, I would love to send you a copy. And my son calls it a toilet book because it all... He loves me.
No, but I think I know what you mean by that.
Yeah. So
you've got that one book that hangs out in the bathroom.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, if you want to use it as a toilet book, then actually I would be honoured. But it's been really lovely to meet you.
This is great. Can we have Bryony on every episode so she can say nice things about me?
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, if you have been, thanks for listening. Join us next week. We will see you then. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
God in Film is hosted and created by Giles Goff.
That's me.
Mixing and editing by Giles. Our logo was designed by
Julie Walsh.
And our theme tune was composed by
Rick Lee.
Waffle editing by
Natalie Miniker.
Please rate and review.
Please give us 5 stars because that's a nice thing to do.